Christmas!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Box, the exciting show where we open a box and decide if the box rocks or if it's a box full of rocks.
I don't know if this is going to be a good episode.
This pillow is fucking useless shirt.
Yeah. Well, hello, everybody out there in PJCN land. It is Thursday, April 8th, 2021. And guess what? Front Center Mezzanine is back. Are you as excited as I am?
I really am. I didn't realize how much I missed the theme music, and I was just kind of missing all of it. And it popped up, and I was like, oh, man.
Every time I, look at specifically the Front Center Mez intro and I see all the awesome guests we've had, it makes me really proud of what we've done and kept the spirit of theater alive during this tumultuous year. And
it's amazing because I have the exact opposite reaction when I see the video of all the stuff we've done on the network, and I'm like, we're a fucking embarrassment to the internet, and that's okay.
Whether or not that's the case, I wouldn't want it any other way.
Exactly.
I thrive on being embarrassing. there's literally a clip in our everyday intro of me in the tub. So
right.
I am not ashamed of any of this. No, but before we get to our incredible guest tonight, and rest assured, this guest is incredible. I first saw him on Broadway in Hair, which I saw over a dozen times, and I was blown away by his talent and his performance in that and everything I've seen him in. I think he's one of the great young character actors of the stage over the last decade plus. But we have a lot of fun stuff coming up in the next few days on the network, so let's go through that, and then we'll get that out of the way, and then we'll get started. Sound good?
I forget we have other stuff.
We do a lot of stuff. So tomorrow night, April continues with a watch-along of Kong Skull Island. Do you see the thumbnail? Because I don't.
I do. You're okay, good. So, it's that StreamYard thing. You're okay.
Yep. So tomorrow night is a Schmodown pay-per-view event. It's a huge event. You got Kevin Smith versus Stacey Howard, and then you got Merle versus Collins 2. So because of that, we're likely going to start the watch-along a little later than normal. Let's estimate 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. And we'll play it by ear if for some reason the pay-per-view goes longer. But if you're not
Can
a $10,
how stressed I am. Just stressed.
It's arguably the biggest event of the Schmodown season thus far.
Yeah, we've got freaking Kevin Smith coming back. It's his third match. He's playing Stacey Howard, and then Dan Merle and Adam Collins going toe to toe for the second time, which is crazy.
Every time I remember that Kevin Smith himself competes in the Schmodown, and you get to write trivia questions for him to answer, and I'm sort of like, oh, this is legit stuff. This isn't child's play.
No,
so stay tuned to both my social media and the PJCN Twitter account for any updates there might be on the timing of tomorrow's watch along. Aiming for 11 Eastern. If it has to be a little later, it will be. We will be here. Then Saturday afternoon, the Water Cooler Chat is back. We had to miss last week, so we'll be breaking down episodes 3 and 4 of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Of course, episode 4 drops tonight at midnight Pacific. So be sure to join PJ and myself and probably Sully and Dan and maybe Eric and a couple other of the gang to discuss that. Sundays are the unwind, and I don't know about you, but I love our new tagline so much more than the old one, because it used to be the show about whatever, and now it's where we're going. We don't need rails, because who knows what the show is ever going to be. We kind of just wing it. It's basically just like us hanging out on Zoom, and people for some reason decide to watch it.
It's everything I could ever hope our shows could be and more.
I know it's delightful nonsense. A couple other notes. Tuesday is finally episode 3 of Book Nook. This is a crossover event with Danny Ramirez's show Watch the Book. So instead of Dwayne and myself just breaking down the book, and this month's book is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, we are also going to be discussing the film adaptation by Mark Romanek, doing some comparisons and some contrasting, talking about the differences between the two, what's the same, if there's a version we like more. And if you haven't read the book yet, it is much shorter than the last book we did for Book Nook. It's like 220 pages. Beautiful book. You still have time to read it. Highly recommend it. So you can join us on Tuesday in the chat, engage with us. It's going to be a blast. We do have a Patreon. Check it out. See if there's a tier that's right for you. All sorts of fun perks. We could not do this without our patrons. And as always, I am going to shout out our incredible patrons, our executive producers, Brandy Parker, Brandon Buckingham, and Ricardo Franco, our gold producers, Sean Wingblade and Mike K. And I'm going to take a deep breath. Our producers, Jeff Alterman, Stephen White, Kale the Youth Critic, Bador, Jake Berlin, Anton Putra, Tyler Birch, Patricia Carrillo, Chris Pokernoy, Shira Potato, Ferris Muthana, the illustrious and lovely Molly Damon, and Kristen Smith's mom herself, Beth Harris. Thank you so much. We literally could not keep the lights on this network without you guys. Your support does not go unnoticed. Otherwise, I think that's about all we have to promote, because that was a lot to talk about already.
It's like we have stuff going on here sometimes, and I'm really proud of it. And it's weird because, we obviously just passed the 1 year mark, and yet here we are. We're still like chugging along, man.
I have still not fully recovered from our 1 year show. I'm sure everyone watching tonight watched, but 2 Wednesdays ago, we did a 1 year anniversary stream. It lasted for over 5 hours. We had over 40 different guests from the online movie pundit and Schmodown community. I was as drunk as I've been in a long time by the end of the stream. I did throw up the next day, so choices were made. I apologize, but it was a blast. I think I shed some tears in my just general admiration and support for what this community is that we've built. So thank you so much for all of that. One last thing, we do have a TeePublic shop. You can get t-shirts and mugs for all of our different brands and shows, including our newest, the MHCN logo, which you can see here on this mug. It features my 2 pooches. And I could think of no one better and no one more handsome to model this shirt than my good friend Keon. So if you want to see what that shirt looks like, there's Keon in the MHCN shirt. Go ahead to our TeePublic, buy merch. It helps us out. Without further ado, I think we should bring on our guest. Like I said a little bit before, I first saw him on Broadway in Hair, which I ended up seeing over a dozen times because that was incredible. I've seen him in many other shows since then, including his one-man show, Cabaret, which is arguably the greatest name ever for a cabaret show, because if your last name is Kober and you don't call it Cabaret, you fucked up. So I'm glad he didn't fuck up. Ladies and gentlemen,
it's true.
Andrew Kober.
Shit, you saw Cabaret?
I sure did.
Wow.
I sure did. I feel
I'm
like
really
I saw
flattered.
it at Joe's Pub.
That was the very, very first incarnation. That was
I feel like
2010.
Yeah, that tracks with my memory of when it was. Yeah.
Wow, that's wild. That was a while ago. Well, hello. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm just so tickled.
I know.
I can't believe how much you got going on. I was blown away by all those plugs.
We, it's a combination of people seem to enjoy it, and with this never-ending pit of despair we've been living in over the last 14 months, it just gives me something to do and to look forward to each day.
I don't know what you're referring to.
No, not at all. No. Any creative outlet is good. So this has been what we've found that works for us.
Yeah, it
makes me laugh. Oh, no, go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to say that this is really, for me, my moment. I feel like right now I'm sort of at the pinnacle of what I'm capable of as a person, as an artist, as a father and a husband. It's all kind of really coming together for me now. This is it. This is what I needed to push me over the edge.
I love it. And it makes me happy every time that someone comes on, they see all of our plugs and they go, "You guys do that every week?" And yeah,
That's
every week.
That's more than I've done in the last 13 months.
Well, it's funny because this is about you and not to make this about me, but I think sort of what you were just saying, like undeniable, the tragedy and suffering that has occurred this last year plus has been immeasurable. And our hearts continue to go out to those who have lost their lives and have gotten sick in the economic turmoil affecting the theatrical industry, the restaurant industry, and on and on and on. But I also really feel like I have gone through an immeasurable amount of personal growth this year. I really decided to like be proactive in finding out who I really want to be as a man. And so if I can have a silver lining, I think that's a pretty good one. I also got nominated for a Tony Award this year and won a Drama Desk. So that's legit too. I won't complain.
Whatever. I'm sure I've got a couple of those. I haven't checked, but if I got to check my Google alerts. I bet I have a couple.
You should. You should.
I'll take a look.
In my opinion.
That's kind of
but like how has this year been treating you? I mean, I know it's been difficult for everyone, especially for someone like you who works on the stage so much. What have you been up to? How have you been doing?
I've been okay. You know, it's like it's so. I keep reminding myself that if the worst of my problems is boredom, that I'm in very good shape. The last year has been very strange and very unusual. I'm in a very, very fortunate position in a number of ways. Some of them are that right before the pandemic, I have a wife who's an adult woman, and I have a son who's 4. He was 4 when the pandemic started. Now he's 5. We moved out of the city into the suburbs right before the pandemic, which for us and for being the parent of a small child really was great, was a lifesaver. The fact that we now live in New Jersey and we've got a yard and we've got a deck and we could be outside when it was the scariest of times and we were all kind of scared to go outside was huge. Also the fact that my wife is a civilian, she's a muggle and has a real job and has been able to support us and work from home safely. And the fact that in all of the ways that this time has been sort of like existentially terrifying, we haven't had to worry about a roof over our heads or food on our table, which makes us very lucky. Our family has all been able to be healthy, and now our immediate family is all fully vaccinated, which is a huge relief.
That's awesome.
So that's it's all fine. The challenges have all been much more sort of ephemeral, right? Like they're what am I if I'm not doing 8 shows a week, and how fulfilled can I feel in other parts of my life? And it's also like it's important, but it's also such a place of privilege to be in, to be able to like spend my time worrying about those problems.
I totally get it. And I love that in the chat, our good friend Jake Yakavetta says, I have a wife who is an adult woman is not a phrase I was expecting to hear. So
I like to be clear about that. A number of years ago, there's when we were pregnant with our child, I think I put it on Facebook or something, and one of the theater websites picked it up and said, Andrew Kober and wife expecting first child. And that was like, it was a Broadway website. She's not
sure,
so that's fine. But like also like she's a much more accomplished and intelligent woman, a much better adult than I am in basically every way. And so being my wife is sort of like the least of her accomplishments. And so it's important to clarify that she's an important and individual that has nothing to do with her marriage to me. You know what I mean?
I love that. It reminds me of George Clooney and his wife when you'll see articles like incredible, like I can't recall off the top of my head what she does, but like she has all these incredible accomplishments and it says her name and everything she's done, and then like her Hollywood husband and they don't even name him. That's my favorite. Exactly. Like, put respect on her name, and then this guy just made some tequila and acted in a few good movies.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up your wife and your child, but also this was later in my notes, but how is Murray, your dog?
Murray the dog is not
I love dogs.
I mean, he's a great dog, and he's been my best bud for I got him the same month as you saw Cobra for the first time.
Oh wow.
He's been around for a long time, and Murray was a city dog. He spent his whole life in Manhattan, and then we moved him out here to the suburbs, and so he was used to, we lived right over Columbus Avenue, and he was used to the sounds of Columbus Avenue. He was used to the bikes and the buses and the sounds. We moved out to the suburbs where there's no kind of din. There's no white noise here. And so now every sound is a giant existential threat to his safety and to like his general wellness. So like every passerby, every squirrel is really scared of him. And I think he also like has taken on some extra self-appointed responsibilities since we had the child. He's very like interested in protecting the clan, but it's not his job. And he sleeps now so hard at night and snores so loud because you can tell he's just been working so hard on patrol all day in a way that is not necessary.
What breed is he?
He's a cockapoo.
Okay.
He's a Muppet. I mean, he's a Fraggle Muppet, and
Sure.
he's named after the dog from '90s sitcom Mad About You.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Their dog was named Murray, and I've been watching the reboot. By the way, it's my favorite sitcom.
I forgot it was on. Holy crap!
Well, is it on like the Paramount Network or something
was on
bizarre that no
something
one
like
gets?
Yes, but it just came over to Prime. So if you're a Mad About You fan, you can check it out.
I mean, look, I think Paul Reiser is incredible. So
and Helen Hunt, come on.
Yeah.
And like the whole gang's back, friends. We're talking about John Pankow. We're talking about Richard Kind. Richard
don't
Kind.
Get me started on Richard Kind. Although now, for what it's worth, when I think Richard Kind, my mind immediately goes to the Documentary Now episode where they make fun of the cast recording of Company.
Of course,
which speaks to who I am as a person. That is co-op, which is like right. And I know Alex Brightman is in that, who I know you're friends with and work with, and we could talk about morons down the line. But yeah, I'm glad, all things considered, you're doing well and that your family is healthy and you have a roof over your head and all that stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like those. I sort of made without getting too deep, when the pandemic first struck and everything sort of shut down, I sort of went, all right, well, I'm gonna just not deal with that part of me. I'm just gonna put like my whole actor life on a shelf, and I'll come back to it when I can, because I think that will be minimally painful. Sure. And also because I've always sort of considered myself, like, my whole kind of narrative for myself has been like, I happen to be good at this, and so that's what I do. It's not like my great love. I don't care. I just do it because it's easier to like get rejected if you don't care that much. We all get rejected all the time. So yes,
in so many different ways.
Yeah. So it took a few months for it to like bubble to the surface in a way that I wasn't expecting. Like suddenly I really wanted to, one day I was like, I have to sing some show tunes today, I think, which is not something that I had ever felt in my life.
Conversely, I think that at least 4 to 5 times a day. I'm in the shower, I'm in my living room, I'm on the subway. Watch out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got to sing them all the time. It was my job, and then when I didn't get to do my job, I got to missing it, and so that was fun to learn about myself. Actually, like fun to learn that what I do is more important to me than I had given it credit for. And so, while that's good to know, it's also like painful because I would like to be able to do it.
Sure.
There's that kind of uniquely challenging thing about theater artists, that like we don't get to pick when we practice our art in the way that a lot of other artists do. And so even under the best of circumstances, if I'm a painter, I can paint anytime I feel like it. But we're sort of not for now, but maybe soon. And like, already starting in some cool small ways. I was excited to see that thing last week with Nathan Lane and Sabian Glover. That was cool.
Yeah.
I think like, that's good. Let's start figuring it out. Let's start working on it.
Yeah. And there's that show Blindness opening this week at the Daryl Roth Theater, which to be fair, doesn't have a company or a cast, but it's still...
Yeah, I think it has a voiceover, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think there's a voiceover and it's multimedia, but it's still communal theater where people are buying tickets and going. And so any step forward feels like a good step towards what it could be, I would say, in the fall maybe or early winter.
Or whenever.
Whenever.
Yeah. We got to start working it out. And I can be patient. So much of like being an early middle-aged character actor is about patience, and so I have gotten used to it.
I guess my other question before we like hop in the proverbial time machine and talk about your childhood and all that good stuff is, And if you're not comfortable answering or whatever, that's fine. But, there's been a lot of talk about certain rules that equity wants to put into place for reopening. I know there's been some controversy. I've talked to some people in the industry who feel very strongly about it. I was wondering what your thoughts are. Are there certain things that resonate more for you as a performer that you think make sense, and then other things you think are maybe untenable or unrealistic?
Yeah, I was really excited to see the latest recommendations, which included a thing about how if a company is fully vaccinated, then a lot fewer restrictions are necessary. I think that's perfectly reasonable. I think the thing that I have tried to keep in mind through all of this is a lesson I learned really, really early on when I was taught by an older actor who had been in many Broadway shows and I hadn't been in any, which is that no one knows how the hell to do this. We're all idiots making it up as we go along and trying not to be found out, right? Again, under the best of circumstances, that's the case. No one knows how to do any of it. Ragtime, why is that the first show that comes to mind, didn't just spring fully formed out of anyone's mind. It took a lot of people trying and missing and getting it a little wrong, and maybe this is a little righter, and who the hell knows. This most unprecedented thing is a great example of a lot of people who have the very best intentions and a lot of great experience with things that are a little bit like this, but no one has experience with anything exactly like this. Yeah. Everyone's trying their level best. And I think that I am proud to be in two unions that when they get it right or when they get it wrong, I know are really working their asses to make it happen and to keep actors as safe and as employed as possible.
I love that Ragtime was the first show that came to mind because it's often one of the first shows that come to my mind. It's one of my favorites. And we had Ann L. Nathan on the show a couple months ago, and she was part of the original cast. So we've certainly talked a lot about Ragtime here. It's an incredible piece of theater, really.
It's unbelievable. I saw it in I guess I must have been in middle school or high school, and I still remember. I mean, I still have printouts, paper photographs of me at the stage door with, Audra and Stokes and all those guys. Yeah. And it was that show was unbelievable. And I'm a couple years older than Leah Michelle, but I remember thinking she's about my age, and look at her, she's in this whole thing.
Look at her go, yeah. I know. And I think if I remember correctly, it's the first show in my life where I saw both the original production and the first revival.
Oh, really? I didn't see the revival. I missed it.
I loved the revival. It was a very minimalistic approach, very stripped down, very, minor set work, and it allowed the emotion of it to really come to the forefront. But I just thought that was so cool that I had been around long enough at that point to see the first production and then the revival. And now, of course, there's been more cases of that, like Spring Awakening and other shows that I've seen multiple productions of. But that was the first one that sticks to mind.
That was the show that for me, I remember, I guess I probably wasn't that aware of it at the time, but I found it so moving and it was so beautiful. But also I remember being so impressed by the craftsmanship of it, just by the making of this thing, by the construction of this feat of making, right? Mm-hmm. It's sort of the same way I felt about the play whose name escapes me that Katrina Lenk did a couple years ago, and it was great, and it was about a Jewish theater company.
Oh my god, yep.
And it won all the things, and it was so great.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And then
you're going to shout it out.
Starts with an I.
Yeah, I was going to say Inception, but that's not it.
No, I wanted to say Invincible, but I don't think that's it either.
Someone's going to yell it out in the chat.
Yeah, probably.
But I remember at that show being very affected by the piece, but also sharing that feeling with being so impressed that a bunch of dummies sat down and made it, that people really made it. There was nothing there. And then they made that thing be there, which is astonishing to me.
That's, why I love any kind of storytelling, whether it be theater or film or television or a novel. It's there's nothing. And then some indecent. Yes. Thank you.
Thank
indecent.
You. Oh,
there you go.
Elizabeth. Thank you.
My wife coming through.
Oh,
there's nothing. You have a blank page, and then some schmuck or a couple of schmucks get together and they turn nothing into something, and frequently that's something spectacular.
Yeah. So it's no one knows how to do this next part. No one knew how to do the last part. No one knows how to do the next part. And I think that we're probably not going to get a big musical with 40 people in it. There's not going to be 40 private car services to take everybody home at night. And I think,
that was one of those
but like that's okay. We know that. We know that. We're figuring that out. And I'm not on the equity council. I don't know how much of that was like a starting bargaining position. Who knows? But like I think it's good to have the conversations, and I think it's if anything, it certainly comes from the folks at Equity trying their best to keep us absolutely as safe as possible.
Oh, it comes from the best of intentions, and then it's just about finding the middle ground that's going to work for everyone. And I like Elizabeth said, she works for a theatrical publishing company that reps Indecent, so she has written that name many times.
Such an amazing show.
There you go. It is great. So let's now hop in that time machine I mentioned, and let's traverse your childhood.
Let's plunge. Let's delve.
Let's delve in. What, can you think of a specific inciting incident or time, whether it was elementary school or middle school, when there was like that light bulb and you're like, oh, theater and or musical theater is what I want to do?
Absolutely. We took a 6th grade trip to Toronto. I grew up in Shaker Heights, Ohio. So
my mom grew up in Shaker Heights, Ohio.
You're kidding.
Swear.
Come on. It's a great little town. It's a great place to grow up. I wouldn't want to.
I lived there for like 4 months when my grandmother was sick when I was very young. But
it's a great town. I loved living there. I was there my whole life till I turned 18. And so we went on a class trip to Toronto, just across the river there, and saw the Phantom of the Opera and Sunset Boulevard. I don't know who programmed this trip, but that's what our entertainment was on our big class trip to Toronto. And it was Diane Carroll as Norma Desmond. And I don't remember who was in Phantom. But I remember seeing Phantom. We saw a matinee, and I loved it. I thought it was the best thing I ever saw. I had never seen a musical, but I remember thinking, like, this is the best thing that's ever been in front of my eyes. And I loved the whole experience of it. And then the curtain call happened. And I watched everyone drop character and bow. And it became suddenly clear to me that, like, these were just people at work today. Like, they just went, this was their job. Like, my dad put on a tie and went to his office. These people did this today at their job. And so I went and I asked the usher, I said, is there a way to meet these people? Like, can I meet them? Which was very ballsy of young me, if I do say so myself. And I guess like stage dooring is not really a thing in Canada, or it wasn't with that show at that time. But he like found the house manager who called back to stage manager. And anyway, he got the Phantom and the Raoul and the Christine to come out to the lobby and meet me. And they were like in jeans and gonna go get some sushi or whatever. And I went, oh yeah, that's it. This is how I want to spend my time, is doing this. Like, they just got to do that amazing thing for 2.5 hours. Then they bowed and now they're done. Like, their day is done. And they just went to work, and their regular day was the most amazing day of my life so far. And they're going to do it again in like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that seems like a pretty good thing. And so when I had the dumb luck to be medium good at it, I figured let's make a run at it, and that's what I did. I think I was medium good at 12.
Oh, at 12. Okay, I was going to say I appreciate your humility, but I would dare to say that you're at least medium good plus.
That's kind. I hope now I am.
I think so. Like, I anyone who knows me knows that I do not bullshit. I only like to have guests who I respect, and I've been a fan of yours since Hair. I think you're remarkably talented. So did you start then doing the shows at school, whether it was, middle school, high school?
Yeah, Cleveland weirdly has a thriving youth theater community. And because I was kind of tall and big and like had some gravitas for a 13, 14-year-old or whatever, I sort of played all of the great father and grandfather roles in the musical theater canon. Daddy Warbucks and Captain Hook and Mr. Bumble.
I played Mr. Bumble in middle school, so I get that.
Underrated role for my mind.
I love it. It's you like are there in the beginning. You get that cute little number where the girl sits on your lap, and then you kind of disappear for a while, and Bill Sykes takes over as the villain. It's good stuff.
That's right. Yeah, you do Boy for Sale. You get to show off the chops a little bit, and then you take a break.
That's it. I'm done.
So I started doing all that, and I'm like, I joined my school's choir and whatever. And I had a guidance counselor. I was really, really lucky to have a guidance counselor who was also the former choir director. And so he was like plugged into the kind of arts and into theater a little bit. And he told me about a pre-college program at Carnegie Mellon that you could do after your junior year, where you go for 6 weeks and you check it out and you see like what it's like to go to a conservatory program, if that's something you're considering. And I went there for 6 weeks and I really enjoyed it. And at the end of it, you do a mock audition, which is just so you can kind of see what it feels like to do an audition. And there were like rumors going around that sometimes some people might get in from that mock audition, but that it hadn't happened in years and you should really not think about it. And I said, okay. And so I did my pieces. And then a couple weeks later, I got a letter offering me admission for the following fall.
Oh, wow.
Which was like the luckiest, best thing to ever happen to me. And it was me and this guy, Dan Amboyer, both got it. And Dan now is like the handsome guy on Younger. He's like had this amazing TV career. He's so talented and like so handsome. And he's had this amazing career. He played like Prince William in the Lifetime movie about William and Kate, which is like not his best credit, but it's my favorite of his credits.
No, that's a fun credit to have.
It's an amazing credit to have. Yeah,
absolutely. So we got in as go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say for those who don't know, like arguably Carnegie Mellon is one of the great drama schools in the country.
Yeah, it's a fine program. And they didn't want me as a musical theater major was the only hiccup, which was fair because I am not a good dancer. I wasn't a good dancer and I continue not to be a good dancer. And so they said, because I was about to start my senior year of high school, they said, listen, you're a good singer and we would be happy to have you if you can like spend your senior year taking some dance classes, like get a little better, and then you can re-audition and move over to musical theater in the fall. And I said, okay. And then I didn't do that at all. I just kind of sat around for a year and did not do any of that. And I went there, still re-auditioned to move over. And they were like, did you do any kind of
at
dance?
all?
And I was like, I did not. No. And they said, okay. And so I stayed as an acting major and just kind of kept singing on the side. Lobbied to make them let me sing at Showcase, which took a little convincing. And then that was that. Now I've done a bunch of Broadway musicals just to show them, just out of spite. That's the whole reason for my career, spite and to be a part of the Broadway softball league.
I have been to many Broadway softball league games. I hope it happened. Well, I don't know. I miss it. It's fun.
Yeah, me too.
So whenever we talk to someone who actually went to a conservatory or a strong, drama or musical theater program in college, I'm always curious about the tone. Because I went to film school and
sort of like a contemporary legit.
Yeah, like was
that
it
was a tone joke about my singing voice. Okay,
I got it. Because with film school, which I think has a lot in common with theater school, some are very cutthroat, some are more supportive. What was it like? Was everyone like trying to fight each other for the same roles? Was it more supportive? Did you feel like it was a community, or was everyone out to just one up each other?
Well, I think I got there at a pretty good time. A couple of years before, they had just done away with the cuts system. So they had sort of an institutional system where they bring in several more freshmen than they intend to graduate. And they're like kind of mandated cuts every year.
Sure.
They got rid of that before I got there by like a few years. And so I think I got there at a much kind of looser, more supportive time to be there. I also arrived at the magic moment where like my freshman year, the senior class was included Josh Gad and Leslie Odom and Rory O'Malley, and had included Josh Groban before he dropped out to go and do what he did.
Yeah, I don't know, like Tony Award winning, Academy Award nominated Leslie Odom Jr. Like,
yeah.
I think he's having a pretty good career.
Yeah, he's doing
okay for himself.
I think arguably Josh Gad is doing success as well. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah. So they're doing fine. And Megan Hilty was a junior at that time. And
oh my God.
And Patina Miller was in the class.
It was a murderer's row. Yeah.
It was a magic time. And I was also in the very fortunate position, I think, to be the only character actor in my class for sure. And I think once Josh left, the only character actor, period. And so I never felt competitive with anybody. I was in a position where nobody else was going to play the roles that I was going to play. I was the only one.
That's ideal.
Yeah, it was great. So I can't speak to whether anybody else felt especially competitive, but I always felt pretty supportive. Their whole kind of philosophy really appealed to me, which is that like it's not like a Meisner school or a Stanislavski school or anything like that. It's they described it to me as like a toolbox. They give you lots of different stuff, and you can kind of keep what works for you and ditch what doesn't. And that made a lot of sense to me because some stuff doesn't work for me at all, and some stuff really did. And so to be able to kind of like keep the stuff that I wanted was really nice.
That's awesome. Are there, one or two roles that you did at Carnegie Mellon that stand out to you that you felt like, oh, I was really good in this, or this was like an important stepping stone on what my career would become, type of roles I like to dig my teeth into?
Yeah, I mean, I got to, I definitely kept with the trend of playing roles of men 40 and 50 years older than I was.
Sure.
So I played like Cladwell and Urinetown. Like I think we were the first university to do Urinetown.
Which
and
is
John
a
Carafa,
great show.
an amazing show. John Carafa had choreographed the Broadway production. He came and directed ours. And that was so great. And I wore a bald cap. I looked like the Penguin. And Patina Miller played, what's her name? Penelope Pennywise or whatever. The woman, she played the woman. That's Nancy Opal's part.
Right.
Who sings Privileged to Pee. And I'll tell you what, no one has ever sung Privileged to Pee like Patina Miller.
Anytime I've heard Patina Miller sing a song, I think you could then thereafter argue no one has sung that song like Patina Miller sang that song.
She's good at singing.
She is.
So I got to do that. That was really cool. I did a lot of Shakespeare, which at the time I felt like was sort of my Achilles heel as an actor, but I think I just needed a little bit more time for it to kind of settle in. And I've spent more time studying it and now doing it a few times at Shakespeare in the Park. And that's been, every time I kind of dig into it now as an adult, I'm so grateful for the foundation that they leave, even though I was sort of resistant to it at the time, I think. We did a new musical version of Animal Farm, the George Orwell book.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
It involved a lot of masks, I think, and I played Napoleon the Pig.
Okay.
And it was not, I think, an especially successful musical, but it was my first time developing a new musical, which is something that now obviously a lot of us spend a lot of time doing. So yeah, really, I think Urinetown was really pretty good. I stand by that production. Dan Ambler, handsome.
Like I said, I'm a huge fan of that show. I remember seeing it on Broadway and being kind of blown away by how smart, because you hear the title and you sort of like try to reconcile intellectually with the subject matter. And then you realize what a, incredibly intelligent work of like agitprop social satire it is. And it's sort of just like, I'm like, oh, this goes deep.
Yeah, it's so sort of subversive and so smart in a way that really nothing on Broadway was at the time.
And I sort of feel like now would be an ideal time for a revival because I think it has a lot of extra layers that could be brought to it just in the wake of the previous political administration. We're not exactly secret here about our political leanings on this network.
What if I was like just in a MAGA hat and I was like, what if I was a full out?
I am already having a hard enough time with the fact that you're wearing a Yankees hat as a diehard Mets fan. But PJ is a Yankees fan, so that's okay.
I was actually wearing a Yankees shirt and hat before I came on, and I didn't want to put Maxwell through it because he usually gets he gets in a mood when I wear my Yankee stuff. And then I came on and I was like, oh man, Andrew had one too. And I was like, we could have just been wearing Yankees stuff.
No, Andrew can get away with it. That's fine.
It's not a choice I made. It's like I'm not a huge baseball fan generally. I tend to buy hats of places that I like. But my dad grew up in the Bronx. My dad is from the Bronx. Like he grew up in the 30s and 40s in the Bronx. And so even though I was raised in Cleveland, he raised me as a Yankees fan. I was the only Yankees fan in Cleveland. And so I never had any choice in the matter. Like I was always going to live in New York and be a Yankees fan.
It was the same for me. My dad, when he was a kid, was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan, and then they left, and he chose the Mets. So even though I mostly grew up in South Florida, I mean, I think there's more Mets fans in South Florida than there are Marlins fans, to be sure. Yeah,
it's just kind of gifted to you. I was just recently put in the position of having to choose what teams my son will be a fan of, because like his pre-K had a wear your favorite sports jersey today, and I was like, he doesn't have a favorite. What are you talking about? life. And so I had to just pick. I ended up like selecting. It was football season, so I selected like 4 different jerseys, and I just showed them to him on the phone, and he was like, "That one." So he's going to be a Jets fan.
Okay,
Nice.
Sure, why not? We live in New Jersey.
Well, that makes perfect sense. They may be the New York Jets, but they sure as heck play in New Jersey.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many of your productions and stuff I want to get into, but we've mentioned Cabaret a few times, and I have a strange memory, and certain things just never leave. And so there's one story you told in Cabaret that has always stuck with me because it resonated with me in certain ways in a weird reverse mirror sort of thing. And I remember you giving this incredible speech about how because you were in the drama program, you had to come out as straight.
Well, it goes a little deeper than that. It's so I, in high school I was, I think as everyone is, unhappy, and I didn't know why, and I was not good at talking to girls, and I wasn't into show tunes. I didn't like sports or beer. And so I sort of looked around at all the social cues and went, "Oh, I'm gay. I see. Okay. I'm gay." And I wasn't attracted to dudes, but I figured everything else was kind of there. I was 17 or whatever. I didn't know anything, period. I didn't know anything. So I was like, well, I like show tunes. I don't like sports. All my friends are girls, and none of them wants to date me. So I must be gay. And so I came out. I came out to everybody. I told my friends. I told my family. And like the warmness with which I was embraced, like the generosity of spirit and inclusivity and welcome that I received from all sides, really just affirmed it for me. And I was like, okay, any day now, I'm gonna want to kiss some guys. Like that's gonna be the next part. Like that'll definitely come. Now that I've embraced this, I must have been like kind of blocking it, and now that I've embraced this, it's gonna start. And it never did. I gave it like almost 4 years of waiting. Wow. And which is embarrassing. But like I went to college as a newly out gay man who was lying to himself and to his friends. Like it was not cool of me. And I knew that it wasn't true at the time, but I did fully believe that it was going to become true. It didn't, and I had to kind of reckon with that and come clean, come out as straight, which doesn't feel, that's not the right phraseology for it, I don't think. I think it's more like I had to confess my lie to a lot of people.
Sure.
Which was challenging in its own way. I lost a lot of friends in that process, and I understand why. Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of, especially a lot of my kind of female classmates felt comfortable with me emotionally and in ways that they maybe wouldn't have. And I don't begrudge them that. I understand that completely. And but after that point, once I was able to be like, well, all right, I am heterosexual and I still don't really care about sports or beer, and I still really like show tunes. Let's figure out who I am and like what I'm about, what I like. That was kind of a big, that felt to me kind of like the start of my adult life. Sure. And it's that moment that really Cabaret is sort of like centered on, is that kind of experience. Yeah.
Like, I probably saw it 10, 11 years ago, and that was something that always stuck with me. And I am not a therapist. I don't have a degree in therapy, but I just want to say, I think it's interesting that you said you felt you were lying to all these people, but I would argue, if that's what you felt was your truth at the time, I don't think you were lying. I think you were just figuring stuff out, and any fallout or repercussions or people who felt hurt or friendships you may have lost, there was no malicious intent. You weren't trying to deceive anybody. People have all sorts of exploratory journeys throughout their life, and I think that's okay and beautiful in its own right. So
sure. But I think it's important, at least to me, to be really honest about the motivations behind it, which were less exploring my sexuality than figuring out my place in the world. Right? It was not about, geez, I wonder what it would be like to kiss that fella. I knew I didn't want to kiss a fella. What I wasn't comfortable with was reckoning how my personality and my body fit into the world that I lived in. Sure. And so while I agree with you, and I hope I'm being 100% honest with myself that my deceit was not malicious and it wasn't intended in any way to hurt anyone or to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. It was born in a lie to myself. Like okay. It was my own shit that manifested itself in a way that was harmful to others. And I understand that. And I own that, and that's cool. But like now that I am able to, like Cabaret, for example, my now wife, who's in the next room, was at that show. She was my girlfriend then for the first time. And she already knew that story, but like her parents came to that show. Like there were people in my life who I think kind of knew that like Andrew was gay for a minute. I think that's what they knew, but being able to kind of like explore it a little bit more thoroughly and honestly, I think is not only kind of helpful for me, but I think,
sure,
it helps me achieve the goal of it all, which is to be a more honest version of myself.
Well, first of all, I just really appreciate your honesty and vulnerability, and we're under no obligation to share that with us. So I think
it's the only mistake I've ever made, so I feel comfortable talking about it.
Fair, you're flawless otherwise.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I said, well, I guess I have 2 points. So the first point is I completely understand certain aspects of what you're saying, because I think so much of the way we're taught in society is like with very strict gender binaries, like guys like sports and beer and are friends with dudes, and then girls or gay men like musical theater and makeup and all that stuff. And I don't subscribe to that at all. I think gender is a spectrum. I think those societal norms are bullshit. Like I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and when I go into a toy store and like the toys are divided into the boy toys and the girl toys, it drives me crazy, because if a boy wants a doll or a girl wants a lightsaber, who gives a shit? Just get them what makes them happy.
Yes.
Yeah. So those pressures that we get, I understand why that's tough to reconcile.
Yeah. And it's so yes, I recognize I reconciled a lot of that, or at least I made my best efforts to when I was, young, 18, 19, 20. And now as a father of a boy, presumably a boy, that is such a new look at it, right? I'm kind of looking at it through another lens and through another prism. And I have this really kind of beautiful opportunity to re-examine my biases and what kind of lessons I want to teach and what kinds of things it's important to show. We do so much deliberate affirmation of whatever my son's interests are and whatever his disinterests are. To the point where like we joke that like if he ends up just being like a cis straight white dude, like he's gonna feel like he's a disappointment to us, because anytime that he varies from that kind of like perceived societal norm, we're like, this is great, good for you, let's explore that.
Love it.
We don't want to push him too far on the other. We just want to kind of let him be the fullest, most honest version of who he's going to be.
Sure.
And I'm very proud to say that I think we're doing a pretty good job of that so far. So, but it's a really great opportunity to kind of dig back in and see whatever is left kind of kicking around, what kind of old biases we can re-examine, which is another great thing that we learned last summer too, right? What kind of racial biases have I not examined carefully?
Absolutely.
What are my responsibilities and what are my privileges as a cis straight white man? And just kind of owning those, learning about those, and how to kind of operate through the world with a little bit more awareness of that.
Sure. The last thing I want to say about this, before we talk about all the amazing shows you've been a part of in your post-college career is, and I mentioned when I sort of brought this up, that the story always resonated with me because my journey was somewhat similar in that in college I was living life as a gay man. And I was kissing dudes, so not quite like you. But then as time went on, I came more comfortable with my pansexuality. Cool. I was keeping myself in a box because it felt easier, because when you said you're bi or pan, people would be like, oh, you're just kidding yourself. Just lots of stuff to unpack. But so I totally understand what it's like to think you're one thing for whatever reason and then have that growth to figure out exactly who you are and why. So I appreciate your vulnerability on it, because I think it's a great story that people can reflect on and see how it applies to their own experiences.
I hope so. I mean, the other big part of it for me, honestly, was that I had no real sense of self. And I sort of thought that proclaiming my sexuality was like a ready-made personality. Like, I'll be this thing. Like, I'll just be this. And then I don't have to worry about figuring out who I am, because I'll just be this. And that'll be done for me. And then I can stop kind of figuring the rest of it out. It'll be done. Obviously, that's a super flawed way of thinking. And my young age doesn't forgive it. But like, that's what it's about, right? It's about learning that, at the risk of sounding too corny, like, we contain multitudes. Like, we can all be lots of things, and it's okay if a lot of them are in conflict, even internally. We have room for all of that.
I think society tries to push us into a box, and I think it's important to realize that you can have many toads in many different boxes.
Yeah,
even
if, like you said, toads at first, and I wish you had.
Oh yes,
because I've been
many
playing
toads.
a lot of Mario lately.
Many toads in many different boxes.
Yeah.
So you finish up at Carnegie Mellon. I'm assuming you come to New York and start auditioning?
Yeah. I did a dumb thing where I got...
but I thought you said you only made one mistake.
Only other
mistake, okay.
Hold on. So I got offered a spot at the Williamstown Theater Company and their non-equity company, which is like a great gig. And I was all set to go the summer after I graduated. And then but I had a little downtime, and my mom had moved to New Jersey by that point. So I was kind of here. I was like local, and I had reps. I was lucky to come out of Showcase with agents and a manager. And so I was auditioning, and I came down. I was in the final callbacks for the second Les Mis revival, the one, the last one, not the last one, the one before that, the one I wasn't in. And and so they were doing Suburbia at second stage. Okay. And I was in final callbacks for both of those gigs. And it was the week before I was supposed to leave for Williamstown, and I was in final callbacks for both those gigs. And I was like, well, I'm going to get one of these gigs. And so I backed out of Williamstown, and then I didn't get either of those gigs.
Oh.
And so I was left totally with nothing to do, because I was too cocky, and you shouldn't make decisions based on something that might happen. So I was around. I booked another gig. I went up to the now sadly closed Westchester Broadway Dinner Theater, where I did The Full Monty, which is a fun show to do while people are eating their cheesecake. And in the middle of that, I was auditioning to replace Dan Fogler in Spelling Bee alongside my buddy Josh Gad. We were both auditioning at the same time. Josh booked it, which is great. Then the tour went out. And then somebody had to leave the tour, and like the second weekend they called and said, "Can you be here tomorrow?" I said, "Sure." So Full Monty was nice enough to let me out, and then I went and got my equity card, and I toured with Spelling Bee for like 9 months on the road. That was my first big gig.
Fun show and such a great role too.
Oh, it was magic. It was the best.
Yeah, that was a great show.
And like then, a murderer's row, by the way, of talent on that first national tour. We're talking about Jen Samard, Alan Green, who I see as a previous guest.
Yes.
He was the best Mitch Mahoney you could ever imagine.
He's so talented.
He's awesome.
And such a good friends with him. He's such a great dude.
The best man in the world. We've worked together 3 times, and he is my favorite man. Miguel Cervantes, Broadway's Hamilton. Lauren Worsham, Tony nominee. Dana Steingold of Beetlejuice. Wow. Sarah Stiles, Tony nominee. Like that.
Yes.
That cast was bonkers on that tour of Spelling Bee, and like the people of Costa Mesa sure didn't give a shit. So we just had a great time out on the road for 9 months, and then I came back, and then I was back in the city.
Wow, that I'm sort of just taking a second to process everyone who was on that tour. That's an incredible cast.
I can't believe they lined up that cast for that show. It was crazy.
Because now if you were to have that cast in a show, it would be like a huge high budget show where they couldn't afford all those salaries.
Yeah, exactly. It was like well before all these people were really kind of names.
Yeah.
But like they were exactly as talented then as they are now. It was unbelievable. And so then I came back, and my agent, I saw that Hair was happening. And it was going to be a 3-night concert in the park.
So you did it in the park first?
Yeah.
Okay. So you were with it from the get-go.
Yeah, from 2007. So they were doing it as a 3-night concert. I couldn't get an appointment through my agent, so I went to the open call and got it there.
And at that time, Groff was playing Claude at the park?
It was Groff, and it was Karen Olivo as Sheila,
Wow.
and she was very good.
And from Even Then, you're doing Margaret Mead?
Yeah. So what happened? I think they brought me in for the Claude's Dad track.
Sure.
But not the Margaret Mead thing. But in a very lucky turn of events, the assistant director had been one of my contemporaries at Carnegie Mellon, and he said to Diane Paulus, because I had done a female role in Liz Estrada at CMU. And so this guy who knew me, he was in the directing program at CMU, said to Diane, he can play a woman. I saw him do it. And she I think, honestly, I don't think this is false modesty. I think they were like, we could save an equity contract. They only had a finite amount of equity contracts.
Sure.
And I think she was like, we could save an equity contract if we have him do both. And so I think that's why I got Hair, because I was like just good enough as Claude's dad and as Margaret Mead, but like that Venn diagram intersected just enough that I was able to get that gig. So we did it for 3 nights, and it was magic. And
then came Broadway.
Then they brought us back for like a full summer the next summer, and then they took us to Broadway. Like, Oscar Eustace is a very ambitious man and an incredible producer. And he is the person in the world that I know who is best suited for the thing he is doing in his life. Like, there is no one I've ever encountered who should be doing the thing they do more than Oscar should be doing the thing that he does. And he loved the show and loved our production, and just moved hell and high water to get us to Broadway. So we went there. That was pretty good.
Yeah. And for those who are watching who don't know, Oscar Eustace basically runs the public theater, and has his hand in so many things, from Hair to Hamilton to all this incredible stuff that's come out of the public. I have just undying visceral memories of that production of Hair. Like I said, I saw it at least a dozen times, if not more.
Did you ever see it in the park or just on Broadway?
Just on Broadway. When it was in the park, I was still in college in Philadelphia, so I didn't make it to New York that much. And then by 2009, 2010, I was living in New York. 22-year-old kid, sort of, finally getting to see everything I had always wanted to see, and going to rushes and lotteries and just being a bit of a theater whore. And what was immediately striking about that production, and of course, I think Diane Paulus is a genius. Everything she's done, Pippin and Waitress and all this stuff. Yeah. And even Finding Neverland, I thought had some incredible direction and some great coot to theater moments. But Hair felt free and alive in a way that I hadn't experienced before up until that point. And I am remiss to think of many times that energy and tone has been recreated since then.
That's very kind of you to say. It was, it was not a fair first gig for me, because it just was, it was perfect, and it was magic, and every day was special. It was, I think there were 26 of us in the cast, and I think at least 18 or 19 of us, it was our Broadway debut. Wow. There was nothing cynical or jaded or corporate about what we were doing. I mean, Broadway's a big business, and I think the show probably made a lot of money for the right people, and that's great. But that was never our thing. We just were so lucky and thrilled to be doing it every day.
And you wouldn't want a counterculture piece like Hair to be overly corporate or commercialized. That would be a harsh juxtaposition to the intent of the piece.
Yeah, it was.
You still have to make money, of course, but
sure, yeah. I mean, we were all happy about the bigger paycheck when we moved to Broadway, sure. But we were all also really worried that. I think Broadway was incredibly special, and I think that the park was also incredibly special. And we had only ever had the perspective of doing it outside, for an audience that all got there for free, and so the idea of moving it inside for an audience of people paying a couple $100 a pop. We didn't know how it would change or what that would be like. And it did change, and in unexpected and wonderful ways. And it just became this totally different, but also beautiful thing.
So for those who were not fortunate enough to see the production, one of the amazing things about it was how, and there never really is in theater, but more so in Hair, there was no fourth wall.
Yeah.
The way that the cast would just not only frequently go into the audience, but would sit on people's laps, would straddle them, would touch their hair, as you do would want to inherit.
Here's my thing. I never did any of that. That was not my scene. No. Makes me way too nervous. I like, as an audience member and as an actor, I like a solid fourth wall. I prefer it given the option. And so anytime during hair in rehearsal, when it was like, and then everyone's going to run to the audience and like go find somebody to kind of play with, I was like, all right, so the band is upstage center. Maybe I should go, because I can just go jam out with the band. Like, great. And so that's always what I would go do, is I would always go like hang out with the band. Also, like I had a few features that like involved costume changes. So a lot of that stuff I was off changing costumes anyway, but like being in the audience and having actors approach me is a very like anxiety inducing experience for me, because I feel like I all of a sudden have like a responsibility to them that takes me out of the show.
Sure.
And I know that's my shit. Like, that's not
totally
an indictment of the practice of breaking the fourth wall, but it's my thing. It's just not my preference. And so as an actor, I also feel like, I don't mean to impose, but can I just feel a little like I don't want to bother anybody too much, like I want them all to enjoy. Again, all my shit. I know that that is a successful practice in a lot of shows. I know it was in Hair. And I know that a lot of audience members are moved by it, and a lot of actors really enjoy doing it.
Yeah, I loved it, and I'm sure you're aware there was like a very passionate community of young fans that formed around the show, and I was friendly with a lot of them. And it got to the point where people knew what seat to sit in if they wanted like Will Swenson to mess with them, or if they wanted Allison Case or whoever it was. Like, they had their favorites, and they knew if I sit in the box up here, if I sit on house left over here, that I'm going to get that moment of interaction with that actor. So it worked.
And I'll tell you what, there was that group of people was kind of special too. Like, I think part of it's the timing that I had just sort of showed up in New York, but like my nearest and dearest are those people, 10, 12, 15 years later for the folks from the park. Like, I talked to Will, Allison, and Casey Levy all separately about different stuff. Like, we're very much that's my family. They sang at my wedding. Like, those are the people in my life. And there's something about that show that, like, on the page, it's not easy, and you gotta come at it the right way. So it's we were very, very lucky, I think.
So you can't bury this lead when talking about Hair. It's well known that at the end of the first act, the cast removes their clothes. I believe you did as well, if I'm not mistaken. You didn't? Oh, good for you.
There are three, not my choice. There are 3 tracks that don't have the option. And it's Claude, his mom, and his dad. Okay. So Gavin couldn't do it. He would have loved to, but he couldn't do it. And
that doesn't surprise me somehow.
Yeah. And Megan Lawrence and I, Megan played Claude's mom. The two of us couldn't do it because we had lines in that whole sequence. And then there just wasn't time for us to go off stage, change from mom and dad back to hippies, run on, and take those clothes off again. So we never got to do it, which was a bummer, because like I didn't really mind not doing it. I would have been happy to. It didn't really care. But every day those assholes would all run off stage like, oh, that felt so good. I just feel so free. I feel great. I was like, all right, well, that's all right. Okay, fine, good. That's great. That's good.
I'll never forget, there was a time I went with Elizabeth, and we were sitting either in the front row or the second row. And there was a mom with 2 kids who couldn't have been older than 6. And we turned to her and just said, look, you can make whatever decision you want with your kids. I'm sure you're aware of the content of this show. She's like, oh yeah, I've seen the movie. They watched the movie. I was like, but at the end of the first act, there is an ample amount of full frontal nudity. And she's like, it's going to be fine. Naturally, as soon as it happened, she picked up her kids and they ran out of the theater. I was like, well, I warned you.
Yeah. It's, I think it was, first of all, I think we did it really well. I think it was handled really artfully. And one of the advantages of not being in that sequence is that I know what it looks like. I'm one of the very few cast members who's actually seen that part of the show. And I think it was handled incredibly well, incredibly artfully. And I think that just from the like making the show perspective, it was handled really carefully with a lot of care for the actors involved. It was never a mandated thing. Every actor had the choice whether or not to participate. And as far as I know, if I'm not remembering it incorrectly, I think that choice could change from day to day. Like if you just that day, you know, grandma's here, I don't feel right about it. That's cool. You don't have to, you know, there were ways to kind of work around that. And I think it was done with so much of a mind towards making the performers comfortable and making sure that you were doing something that you were always totally in your own power about, which was really great.
Yeah, that's really heartening to hear, because there's so many stories in the entertainment industry about people not being afforded that level of comfort and respect, especially when it comes to nudity.
Yeah.
So that's good to hear. I have one last question about hair before I move on to a couple other shows. And, you know, as we said, you played Margaret Mead, which is a woman. And I thought every time I saw you stop the show in the best way, it was like an absolute highlight, brilliant performance. You would blow the roof off, but you're using a very boisterous, feminine voice. How did that affect your vocal cords and everything? Did it give you trouble at all, or were you able to handle it?
No, I was good then. I mean, I was like 23 or 24 or something. It was fine. So the two things about that. It's not an easy song to sing. My Conviction song is not an easy song to sing. It was an easy song for me to sing at the time. It was built pretty well for my voice. I was young. I was healthy. It was no problem. I was in a tough. There were days when it was not great, and those are days that I should have called out of the show because I was very, very sick, and I did not call out of the show because I was very, very young and very, very stupid, and also very, very afraid of my understudy Josh Lehman. Josh Lehman.
I was going to bring Josh up. So
Josh is a genius. And as soon as I met him in rehearsals, I'd already done the show in the park, but we met on the first day of Broadway rehearsals. He said, "Hi, I'm Josh. I'm your understudy." And I went, okay, so I don't get to call out of this show. This motherfucker is too good. I can't risk it. And so we opened in March. I didn't miss a show until the following February when my then girlfriend, now wife, convinced me to go on a vacation with her for just like a long weekend.
That's incredible. Wow.
I took some personal, because what I was so worried about was losing the respect of my cast. I thought like, I'm going to come back and they're all going to go like, Cobra's back. We got to deal with this again. Like after they knew what it could be. And I later saw Josh play the role because he did the tour, and I guess we got to see a run through of the tour, and he was brilliant and a genius in a way that I couldn't ever have done. And I'm sure some people prefer it, and that's cool. But the fact that like I was able to go, oh, well, that's not how I could do it at all. That's just a different character. Was actually a pretty big relief. The other thing is, a few years ago, we did like a 10th anniversary thing at Lincoln Center, the 10th anniversary of our production. We did it at Lincoln Center, and almost all of us got back together and did the show one night only. And I can't sing it anymore. That song is gone. I can still sing. The notes are also there, but like there's this one very, very long note that I just can't hold as long as I used to. That's over. That part of my life is through. There's other stuff I can do now that I couldn't do then, but I can't hold that note for 20 years like I used to. That's okay.
That happens. Well, unfortunately, we all get older.
Yeah, that's fortunate. I think it's good. I prefer it being older.
Okay.
Like I would trade everything else for that note. Like it's a good deal.
So I may have the timeline messed up a little bit, but it seemed like there was a little bit of a gap on Broadway in between Hair and Les Mis.
Yes, absolutely.
What were you doing, and what was going on in your gap?
Fucking nothing. I mean, I was trying to get a job. Like, I got married, which didn't really take that much time. Like, thank you. I could have kept on working, but I just couldn't get a job. I just didn't work. I was it was like a total drought, and that sucked because I prefer to work, but also I sort of like naively felt like, but I did it. I made it. What's the problem? Like I already did it.
Right.
And I sort of deliberately, like I had passed on a couple other drag characters that kind of came my way because I didn't want to be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
Also, because I think I probably knew like the instrument was not going to last that long. But I was like, that's not the thing. I can do it in the right context, but I don't want it to be like the thing I do.
Sure.
And so, yeah, Big Drought didn't work. Like, there's no reason for it. It wasn't like I joined Greenpeace. Like, I just couldn't get a job.
Wow.
And then right after I got married, things started clicking pretty fast. And like Williamstown came back to me, which was such a relief. I got to go now in their equity company and do a play with Alan H. Green. And I went to Denver and did a new musical. And then Les Mis happened, which was just like such a relief, really. Like it was such a relief.
And that was the revival with Ramin and Will.
Yeah.
So you got to work with Will again. Yeah, and Casey.
Yeah, Will and Casey. Yeah, the two of them had just done the show Murder Ballad. So they like
I
they
saw
were going
Murder Ballad. I loved Murder Ballad.
Yeah, it was cool, right?
That was at the no longer existent Union Square Theater,
which is where we rehearsed Hair, actually.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So I was back with Will and Casey, which was such a relief. Like I found out that I had booked Les Mis. We had dinner with Casey and her husband, and I was like, I have to tell you, I got a little bit of good news. Like I booked, I'm gonna do Les Mis. She was like, I'm gonna do Les Mis. Like we had no idea that either of us had been auditioning. And she said, and also Will's gonna do it. It all came to me at like one dinner. It was so exciting.
That's awesome.
So I got to do it, which was great. It's like my wife's favorite show, so she was over the moon. I tend to book the gigs that are my wife's favorite things. I think there's like some subconscious thing that clicks for me that I just super want to keep her interested. So I keep on like if there's like a TV show or a Broadway show that she just really loves and I have an audition for it, I usually book those ones because I just try a little harder.
Throw a little extra mustard on it, just in case.
Yeah, the one gig I did during the pandemic, I shot a guest spot on Pose, which is like my wife's favorite thing, and I'm sure that I got it because it's her favorite thing. She loves Pose.
I was gonna bring that up. Pose is incredible, but that hasn't aired yet, has it?
No, I think the new season comes out next month, I think, or later this month,
awesome.
Pretty soon.
So obviously, Les Mis is like a drastically different show than Hair. It's like the classic bombastic mega musical that was really popular in the 80s.
Yeah.
What was your experience like, and what did you find was the difference in both preparation and the tone of the theater and how the company worked together compared to Hair, which always felt so free and fun? Because Les Mis is serious and emotional and long, and you're dealing with revolution and murder and all this stuff.
Yeah, yes, very different in a lot of ways. But one way in which they're really, really similar and the processes were really similar was trying to create a real textured world involving lots and lots of characters that don't necessarily each have a lot to say, right? Like with Les Mis, there's a tribe of, I think, like 16 nameless characters without any lines.
Sure.
Just as in Les Mis, there are hundreds of characters that never get to speak up. You don't know what they're about. And in both of those rehearsal processes, we spent a lot of time digging into the world of the play and the world of these people and what happens when these 20 people collide in a space. What is that like? What are the relationships? And so I was, thanks to Hair, pretty used to doing that kind of work. So we were able to kind of dig in and find a lot of the texture there. Les Mis that production of Les Mis had sort of already existed a little bit. They had done it on the road a little, and in Toronto, Ramin had been doing it. And there was like a version that sort of existed. Like did they do it at Paper Mill
too, or am I misremembering? Yes,
exactly.
Okay,
no, you're absolutely right. And so like that sort of existed, but they were very cool about us finding our own way and figuring out our own kind of thing. Les Mis taught me how to do 8 shows a week forever. It taught me how to like bring life to a gig that is so thrilling and exciting for the people in the audience, but maybe like it's a Tuesday and you're not feeling that passionate today. Like, how do you still do that show?
Yeah.
Because I did maybe, I think 300 or so performances of Hair on Broadway. I did like almost 800 of Les Mis. So once you're in deep, once you pass that 500 mark, they can't all be exciting for you, the actor. And so that's a lesson you can't learn in drama school. You got to figure out like, these people paid the same money as everybody else. How do I give them that great show? That I think is the lesson that I took from Les Mis that I've used the most in the rest of my career, is that like, how do you do the gig and keep it everything that it needs to be worthwhile?
Yeah. And some of what you're saying is interesting, because something I always like to ask or talk about is obviously Hair and Les Mis appeal to different audiences. There's going to be some overlap because there's just theater goers who go to everything. But I think Hair probably had a younger audience. Les Mis had more of like the blue hairs and the tourists. How does
the most passionate Les Mis fans are young people?
Okay, fair. But how do you find like the makeup or demographic of the audience can impact your drive or everyone's drive to alter or perform on stage? Is that something you're aware of, or do you just give it your all regardless?
I mean, it varies from show to show. Like, I think that the importance of the audience's input changes. Les Mis is a show that we don't expect a lot of feedback from the audience, right? Like, it's kind of going to happen. We're going to get the gasps and the sighs and the few laughs that there are. We're going to get them pretty consistently. But, a Wednesday matinee is kind of like a Saturday night, which, they're kind of a similar thing. We're doing Les Mis. It's going to be Les Mis. And we're going to send you home at 11 o'clock having experienced all of it, but we don't need a lot back to do it, in my experience. Hair, on the other hand, is much more of a conversation, right? Like, there's a lot more that we are asking for back from our audience, and what we're getting back, even if it's nothing, is going to inform the way that night goes. Not better or worse, just difference. School of Rock is going to be different depending on the energy of the crowd that night, whereas like Sunday in the Park is pretty much going to be the same from night to night, right? We don't need a ton back. That
makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about She Loves Me, which I think was next after Les Mis.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I loved that production. I'm sure
it was pretty magic, wasn't it?
It was. Well, first of all, still to this day, one of the absolute most gorgeous sets I've ever seen on a stage.
I think it's the only Tony that Hamilton didn't win. I think
so. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
For good reason for the set. And I'm sure working with Zachary Levi and Laura Benanti was incredible, because they're world class and so kind from every experience I've had to meet them.
Yeah, that whole thing felt to me like I mentioned my dad was a big Yankees fan. When we were young, he went to Florida and got to do a Yankees fantasy camp, where like a bunch of like people pay a bunch of money and they go and they get to play for a couple days with like Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford and whoever. And that's what She Loves Me was like. I had almost nothing to do in the show. It was not a big involved. I covered Zach and I covered the other main guy, and that was fine. So that was my job, right? I was mostly there as an understudy, but I had to be in a few minutes of the show. But being with Benanti and like Gavin and
you got to work with Gavin again.
Yeah, Jake Krakowski. Come on,
crazy.
Like, it was a magic. It felt like fantasy camp. It felt like, I didn't go to grad school, but it felt like Broadway grad school.
That's awesome. Plus,
my son was born during rehearsals for She Loves Me. And so I was exhausted. I had a newborn infant at home, and he didn't sleep really the first like 6 months. And so I was just tired all the time. But the beauty of She Loves Me is I was really only in the finales of each of the acts. And so I would roll in for an 8 o'clock show at like 7. And I had bought a big dog bed at the Target on 8th Avenue. And I put it under my station in the dressing room in the basement of Studio 54. And I would go to sleep for 2 hours. I would get to work and I would take a nap on the floor, and then I would get up and put on a tux and comb my hair and do the whatever my number was, and then go back to sleep for another hour. And then I finish the show and I bow and I go home. And it was, I mean, like, besides being an amazing show that I learned a ton doing, which is absolutely true, technically, pragmatically, it was the perfect job at the perfect time.
That's awesome. The other thing I find so interesting about She Loves Me is it was the first time a performance of a musical was live streamed.
Oh yeah.
Like there's been pro shots, of course. But I remember this was, you were performing live and they were streaming it to Broadway HD. And I remember being like so kind of blown away by that. And so it's such fascinating. Do you have any memories of that or any extra challenges that came with that?
No, they made it so seamless for us. I mean,
That's
it was
good.
like such a no-brainer. The one I remember, there was a stationary camera front row center. They had just sort of set up a camera there. And there wasn't a camera operator. It was a static shot from front row center, and they put it where a seat was. But it looked weird, I guess someone decided, and they put a wig on it. Which was like, so like when you just look out at the audience, like you wouldn't notice at just a quick glance that like that's a wig on a camera. I'm pretty sure they put a wig on a camera.
I feel like that'd be more distracting than if it was just a camera.
It sounds made up, doesn't it? But I have such a clear memory of it. I'll have to check that. But I think they did that. But otherwise, no, they were kind of like, hey, we're going to do this. Are y'all good? And we're like, yeah, sure. Okay. And we went to work. I mean, like I remember following along on Twitter as people were watching it live. That's an experience I'd never had. But that was it. I mean, it was just like, kind of that really didn't affect our jobs. We just kind of did our thing.
That's great. And I love, I had seen it, but I also decided to watch the live stream because I love that. And I'm a big proponent that there are many ways this industry can figure out to make theater more accessible whilst not also sacrificing the bottom line. I think there's a balance that can be struck that people smarter than me have not yet figured out.
Yeah, I sure hope so.
And so I thought that was such a great step forward, and I'm kind of sad it didn't continue on another. And I think probably because it was roundabout, they could, they have some liberty there. They have some liberty there, but yeah, that was amazing. And I think you could still, if you guys at home haven't seen it, I'm pretty sure it's still on Broadway HD.
Yeah, you can find it. It was on PBS Great Performances too. I think there's a way to find it through PBS. Yeah, that was just like a magic thing. And we used to hang out at Characters, RIP. Characters just closed on 54th Street.
I've produced a lot of concerts at 54 Below. I got married at 54 Below. Characters and I run deep. When I heard it closed, my first thought was, can I reopen Characters? And I was like, no, it's a terrible idea. I don't want to open a bar in a pandemic.
Yeah, no, it's I was so sad the Character. Yeah, we had some great times there. That's a great spot.
So next was the Sondheim, the Sunday in the Park with George.
Yep, another one that was just like, do you want to just learn for 6 months? Here you go. Yeah. It was I was the offstage cover. I had never done that. Not since Spelling Bee, rather. I did that on Spelling Bee. And I didn't audition. It's the only time I've just gotten a straight offer out of the clear blue sky, because they had done it at City Center. They had done it at Encores. Mm-hmm. I don't remember whether or not I auditioned, but I tried to get in or something. I didn't get it. But then once it came around to Broadway, they just called and said, do you want to come do this? I said, yeah. I wasn't doing anything. And
it's do you want to come work on this show with Jake Gyllenhaal?
Yeah. I was like, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. Whatever. Yeah, great. So I just did it. I mean, I think honestly, they called me on a Thursday and rehearsal started that Tuesday. I don't know whether somebody had dropped out or what, but I was like, yep.
Well, good thing you were free, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So I showed up and just again, it was something that you just, even as it was happening, you're kind of going, is this okay that I'm here? It's Jake, who's amazing, and Anna Lee, who is a true genius.
Incredible.
And then every so often they'll be like, oh, Steve's coming by it too. And that's Steve Sondheim.
Well, that was going to be my question. Did you get to meet and interact with him at all?
Yeah, a lot, which is pretty weird. I knew Lapine a little because he directed Spelling Bee, and so we had known each other, and I had done some developmental work on Little Miss Sunshine with him and Bill Finn. But when they start throwing around Steve, that's heavy. That's a heavy Steve to just drop as someone who's going to stop by today. Yeah. And
I love that they call him Steve, not Mr. Sondheim, not Steve. Just Steve will be here. It's all good.
I think the first time I was like, so listen, Steve's coming. And we got a whole speech from somebody that was basically just be cool. Don't freak out. Yeah. He's really excited to see you. He's really happy this is happening. Just be cool. I was like, all right. And we weren't cool. But I just tried to kind of keep my distance because I didn't want to, But so we had our sits probe, which was amazing. It's probably the best score. It's one of my favorite scores. It's
incredible. And by the way, just because There's some people who may not know what a sitz probe is. It's the first time a company goes through a score with the orchestra.
Right, which is like really for most actors their favorite day. Like it's.
I've gotten to sit in on some sitz probes, and just as like a producer and investor, it's also like my favorite day because you finally feel the magic kind of coalescing.
Yeah, you go like, oh, we're not just doing a skit in an empty room. We're going to have a musical here.
Right. Like, oh, this is a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, and Sondheim was there and like very, very supportive, but also like, we need a little more oboe on measure 34 or whatever. It's like, wow.
More oboe.
Yeah. And so he was very kind. Anyway, that we had like a little party afterwards, or like, a drinks thing. And because Janine Tesori had sort of been appointed as musical consultant, she was sort of like the voice of Sondheim for when he wasn't there. Like she was just around all the time. And so she set up some drinks thing, and we went to the drinks thing, and I found myself in a corner. I can't resist a cheese cube. And I spotted some cheese cubes, and I was like, I'm gonna get those cheese cubes. First thing he said this whole time. So I went over to the cheese cubes, and I was like, I'm gonna get these cheese cubes because no one's eating this cheese. Jake Gyllenhaal's not cramming cheese cubes. So I'm like, I'm gonna go. It's just me and Brooks Eshmanskis that are gonna.
Well, I was gonna say that reminds me of the Patton Oswalt joke, and I'm gonna paraphrase really lightly, but he was talking about how at the premiere for Ratatouille, where he voiced the main character, and Brian Dennehy voiced his dad, and they were the only two eating stuff off the buffet, and Brian Dennehy goes, character actors, who gives a fuck if we're fat?
That's right.
Which is not my saying you're fat. You are far from fat.
Please.
But
I got to go to the Astaire Awards, I guess 2 years ago, the last Astaire Awards. I was a double nominee, and both of the shows that I was nominated for, but like the best ensemble. But both of the shows that I was in that were nominated for best ensemble decided I would be a hilarious representative to send to the events. And so I went, and let me tell you, you want to talk about being the only person at a buffet, go to the dance awards. And I had the run of the place. It was the best. So anyway, I got trapped at the cheese cubes, and I was like trying to get out, but I was stuck behind the bar in a wall, and I couldn't get out. And there was just a dude in front of me, so I tapped on. I was like, "Can I just get?" And it was Steve Sondheim, and we had a very nice chat, and he was very kind. My great uncle was a playwright who I guess knew him a little.
Oh, wow.
And so he said something about actors. And I made a joke. I was like, actors are the worst. Something about actors being the worst. And he goes, do you think so? And he's like a great voice. He was like, do you think so? I was like, well, actors. He's like, well, I've met a lot of actors. They all seem to think I'm pretty great. I was like, oh, fuck. I was like, you're right, Steve Sondheim.
Yeah.
And then I left. And I was like, that was, I don't know. Sunday in the Park was like a magic thing. I was a cover. I went on at the third preview with no rehearsal. And that was the scariest. Did you go on
a lot over the run?
No, almost never.
No.
But I did like 3 or 4 performances in a row in previews, like the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th previews. I was part of the photo call. So like all the photos of the show, I'm in the painting, but I wasn't usually. But like, I was just, met with such generosity and kindness from everybody, especially Jake, who really like had to drive the bus on that thing, and was so kind and warm. It was
a beautiful production, and in Act 2, the way they did sort of the light display was breathtaking, I thought. So it
was pretty effective.
It was, and I love that theater. That is one of my favorite theaters now. The restoration they did of the Hudson is just gorgeous. I only have one more question about that show, and I've heard stories and this and that, and I don't know if you have any insight. It was sort of a big deal that for whatever reason the producers decided not to make it eligible for any Tony Awards. And I know it was a limited run, and I'm sure there were concerns about sacrificing potential ticket sales to give seats away to voters. But if you can share, okay, and if not, that's fine too. Were there other reasons that they decided not to?
I'm to be perfectly honest, I'm sure there were, and I don't know anything about it. Like that decision was made so far over my head. We were sort of just kind of told like, hey, we're not going to be doing all that stuff. And we sort of went, oh, okay. I mean, like, I think Jake was a producer on the show. I'm sure that he had a big hand in that decision. And I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know anything about it. I think it was a fine decision. I think it took a lot of pressure off of people that might have felt pressure. I think it was nice that we could just kind of do the show for the sake of it. But no, I don't know.
Okay, that's fair. I think it's interesting, and I think
Me too. No, I thought at the time I was like, I don't know what that's about, but as the
at
swing.
the end of the day, for me, like as nice as it is to win awards, they're fleeting, and great art endures in the minds of the theater goers. No one's going to remember.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was. I don't think it was insignificant that it was a very small house and a very limited run, and to give away a pair to every Tony voter would have put a big hunk of change into the bottom line. I don't imagine that was the only factor, but I don't know.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about School of Rock, and I'm going to kind of let PJ take the reins here because PJ is a huge fan. I mean, I love it too. Actually, PJ and I were at the final closing night performance.
We were.
Of School of Rock.
Oh, cool.
Which was such a great night because they brought like all the kids on and everyone on. But I know PJ in particular is a huge fan of that show. So
yeah, all right, that's a good show.
It was so wild too because I remember when we went to go see it, and we got tickets like last minute the day of. Because we had kind of gone back and forth on if we were going to go in general. And I think that that's now one of my favorite theater going experiences ever was going on a closing night, seeing just like the absolute emotional elation that everyone was kind of sharing together in that moment. Especially because, you know, as it was closing, Beetlejuice was going to be coming in. And so for some of the, like, obviously, why did I blank on his name? The lead of School of Rock.
Alex Brightman.
Brightman was going to come back. And so we saw him there and like him kind of coming back for that last night, but also knowing he was going to be back for Beetlejuice. And it was special, man. It was really special. Yeah,
I missed it.
Okay.
I went to the party. I was doing beautiful. I missed the show.
Well, so you were like in and out of School of Rock a lot. You were in the ensemble, and then you got to play Dewey for a while too.
Yeah, I was the cover, so I did it. Actually, I did it a fair amount. So
I got to see you do it, by the way, and yeah, I did. I was consciously aware of your Twitter when you were saying you're going to be on, and I made sure I got to go and see you on it.
Oh,
I thought
wow,
you were fantastic. Because again, I've always been an admirer of your work.
That's really nice of you. Thank you. I was really proud of that. That was, guys like me don't very often get to be the guy.
Sure.
And so it was really special, even occasionally, to get to do it. I auditioned like when it was first happening. I knew Alex was doing it well before the world knew that Alex was doing it. And I guess when Alex booked it, it was sort of like, it made perfect sense. I mean, he's great casting for it. And I was at opening night as his guest. Like he was spectacular in that role.
I agree.
And I sort of instantly, when he got the gig, I was like, "Oh, well, that's not my gig. Like, I can't. I think I'm pretty good at what I do, and I think Alex is really good at what he does, and I can't do what he does. And I don't think he can really do what I do. But like, I'm pretty funny. I am not funny in the way that Alex is funny. I can't do that. Like he's got like, there's an edge that he has that I don't. There's a kind of like anarchic quality to him that I don't have. And I think he was brilliant in that role, and I'm so glad that it skyrocketed his career. But I instantly went like, okay, well, I'm just never going to be in that show because I can't, if that's what they want, and I think it's a great choice, they're not going to find it here. So as the run went on, they called me in at one point for like The Friend, for the Ned role, and I was like, all right, and I didn't get that.
Yeah, I don't see you in that part.
No,
for whatever reason.
definitely.
No, it was a pretty good audition, but I didn't.
Sure, but
so
it's different.
Yeah, just different. So Alex left. They replaced him with Eric Peterson, who I had actually understudied in Spelling Bee, another Spelling Bee cast member that's gone on to great things. And I went, well, okay, Eric's a little different. It's sort of like that moment when they were casting replacements in Book of Mormon, that there were like Josh types, and then all of a sudden there was a Ben Platt type. Yeah. And that was like, okay, so there's a different way to do it. We know now that there's like another version that is still effective. So Eric wasn't like Alex. He was not like me either, but he's not like Alex, which was the main point where I was like, okay, this team is open-minded enough to see other things. And so then when they called me again, I was happy to go back in. They said, can you play guitar? I said, no. And they said, would you learn? And I said, would you teach me? And they said, you learn a little and we'll teach you the rest. And I said, okay. So I I took a bunch of guitar lessons. I bought a guitar. I'd never played. But I think they just needed me to like demonstrate that I could figure it out a little bit, that my hands could do it.
Did you not play the guitar at all before then, and you had to learn?
Not a lick.
Wow.
So I learned a little bit, and then after I got the gig, they put me in pretty intense guitar lessons to learn the rest. I'm still not very good, but people ask if I play guitar. I'm like, I can play School of Rock on guitar. Like I can play.
Frankly, it's all you needed for that.
I was going to say that's the most important thing, I guess, at that point.
Yeah,
the way you're talking about this is so interesting, because my big question is always, and particularly in this case, when you're taking over a role that someone had played, and someone had played in such a singular and unique way, and that's not even to mention what Jack Black did in the film, right? And I think with Alex Brightman, there were certainly some things he took from Jack, but he so made it his own. Yeah. As an actor, when you're preparing for a part, how aware are you of what was done before? Do you try to take inspiration from that, or do you put it all aside and just say, this is how I am going to do this role based on what's on the page, and ignore who's done it and how they've done it before me?
Well, I think at least for me, part of that comes with like part of the maturity to say the thing I'm about to say comes with age. I think almost all of it does. I know what I'm good at and what I'm not. And I can do okay imitations, but I'm a good actor. And I think that I've learned, especially in an audition, that I audition pretty well. Like I always say that, like, I auditioned at an 8. If everyone else auditions at a 6, I audition at an 8. But everyone else's 6 is going to become a 10 by opening night, but I have plateaued. I'm already there. What you see in the auditions, what you're going to get on the day. That's everything I got. So I have learned now to just like bring into the audition the thing that I do, as opposed to what I think they want to see. And if I can make them want to see the thing that I can do, then that's going to be a pretty good match. Otherwise, it's not going to be successful. I can fake my way through like an approximation of the thing I think they want, which I really am pretty sure most of the time is probably off base. But it's always been much more successful for me to just like do it the way that I could do it, especially as an understudy. Like, I'm not like Alex. I'm not like Zach Levi. You know, I can't do the things that they do, but I can play the same roles they do. So, but I can't give the same performance. So I think the more that I've sort of been able to say, like, there are millions of possibilities in playing a character. There are millions of possibilities in the way you say a line and the way you do a song. And even if, like, you know, I'm understudying and I have to cross to 6 on that line because the lights are going to move, that's fine. I can still do it in the way that makes sense to me and in the way that I think is the most honest version of it for me. I think that's been the guiding principle. Everyone called me the dad Dewey. I was like the dad Dewey. I was like the more mature older one.
And it's so cool because I think that also opens up to the fact that some roles can be played very differently. Like, you see this when it comes to movies, if we've recast characters several times over performances, whether it's the way someone wants to play Bond or Jack Ryan, things like that, like every performance is a little bit different. So I think it's kind of great that you were able to be like, you know what, I'm going to give them what I want and what I can do for it. And if they like that, then cool, let's do it. Otherwise, you know, that's what it is. And I think that that's brave on their part too, because it's easy to want to say, we only want people to be Brightman. We only want people to be this thing. And for you to be like, no, I can't be that, but I can be me. And if you guys like me, then let's do it. Yeah.
I mean, I think that really a lot of the confidence to be able to say that comes from a little bit of age and experience. But I think really, like, I can't do good impressions, at least not well enough to get cast on a Broadway show for them. Like, it's not going to serve anyone for me to try to do what the other guy did or what the last guy did, or even what I think you, the director or the producer, want to see. All I can do is be like, this is my interpretation of it, and you know, be flexible about that. I think there's room for growth and for change, of course, but like,
Of course.
It's really the only option that has the potential to be successful. When I replaced In Beautiful, I'm nothing like the dude I replaced, who is not really that much like the dude he took over for. Like, we all did it super different, and I think that was really fun for especially a show like that had been running for so long. There are a lot of folks in the show who are super excited to get a new kind of voice in there.
Yeah, and I gotta say, Beautiful is still one of my favorite jukebox musicals. I'll fully admit I am not the biggest jukebox musical guy. Like, I'm like, well, let's write original songs and like bring new voices and stuff. But Beautiful was so great because the dramaturgy and the narrative storytelling of it was on point.
Yeah, it's really well constructed. And I'll tell you something else. You know, by the time I got there, that was my 6th Broadway show. It's the happiest company of people I've ever been a part of, and I think that's not a coincidence. I mean, like, I don't want anyone to have the perception that like I've been in unhappy shows. That's not the case. But like at Beautiful, everyone was just tickled to go to work every day, and we're talking about like it was the 8th year of that run or something, and everyone was just it was for everyone but Carol. It's a pretty easy show. It's light, it's fun. The audience leaves in a great mood. It doesn't take like our gargantuan effort physically or vocally or spiritually to do it for anyone except for Carol. And so everyone was just so thrilled to go to work. The Sondheim is like the most beautiful theater. Like that and the Hudson are so great and easy to work in.
The Sondheim is by far the most comfortable theater.
God, right?
For the cast room.
Ooh, I'll tell you what. I had a dressing room. I had my own little. I had a full, a twin-sized bed with a whole thing, and I had like a 45-minute break right in the middle of the show, and I would put on pajamas and get in bed, and it was great. And I've never been happier.
That's awesome.
It was the best.
Who was playing Carol for most of the time you were there?
Vanessa Carlton. I only ever did it with Vanessa Carlton.
Nice.
That's awesome.
She was great. She was, you know, it's so fun to do to do theater with someone who it's like their first big time out. And Vanessa was, you know, she comes from the pop music world, and she was an incredibly successful pop musician. And she had no jadedness. She had no like nerves at all about being like, I'm new here. How do you do this? What's normal? Is this cool? What am I supposed to do after that? Like, she was so cool about her newness and her eagerness to learn. And she was like just incredibly kind and really, really fun to work with.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I want to talk a little bit about Alice by Heart because I'm such a fan of it and I listen to that album all the time. But I was just reminded by text message of the most bizarre little thing that happened. And I don't know if you're going to remember this, but a couple of years ago, my wife and my friend and I were walking down the street very close to Schmackery's.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend has this thing against Schmackery's, and he was going on this anti-Schmackery's diatribe about how overrated it is and how he doesn't understand the lines. We didn't know you were there until later that night. You tweeted, I just heard this guy on the street complaining about Schmackery's, and I was like, oh, that was us.
I don't remember that.
No, I wouldn't.
It's something I would do.
Such a funny story.
It's one of my favorite things to like overhear people bad mouthing something I'm involved with. Like, that's one of my favorites. Is sometimes like on the subway on the way home after a show, I would hear people talking about the show I was just in and just like shit talking it.
Sure.
And I always, I mean, I don't say anything, but sometimes like if I'm getting off first, I'll just make sure they get a really good look at me before I get out. Just I don't say anything, but just like see if they can clock me. It's one of my favorite things. No, I don't remember the Schmackery's diatribe, but I agree there are better cookies. I think it's a good spot, but
I like them. I do not share the same umbrage with those cookies that he does.
No, they're fine cookies.
Yeah, so just a little bit about Alice by Heart, because I thought that was such a special show. I think the music is gorgeous. You know, you have Duncan.
Bye, PJ.
He probably has to step away. He has dogs that need.
It's okay, and I'm gonna go to bed after this. I think I'm exhausted.
Yeah, we'll wrap up soon. That's fine. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, thank you. Such a great ensemble. The music by Duncan Cheek and Steven Slater was gorgeous. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys christened that new theater?
Yeah, brand new MCC theater on the Far West Side. We were the first show in there. That was like, I think Jesse Nelson and Steven Slater had seen me do 12th Night at Shakespeare in the Park. And that's why they called me in for Alice by Heart, I think. And, you know, that show is so different than anything else I've ever done. And it's so, I don't quite know what to say about it. It was such a unique experience for me. And it was working in a way that I have never worked before. I mean, like the physical life of that show was so specific and so beautiful. And the way that Duncan and Steven write is so, you know, there's so much feeling to it and so much kind of poetry to it. It was gorgeous. And I think that I have sort of learned that since the show closed, I think a lot of young people have discovered it in a way that I wasn't totally aware of when it was happening. Like, I think we had wonderful audiences who were really enthusiastic about the show, but I think the cast album has generated an awful lot of love and attention for the show.
Oh, I listened to it more than a lot of other shows I would have thought I would listen to more. And I read the novel that Steven Slater put out, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah. It was also like my first time. I remember seeing Spring Awakening, and like, remember there were those 2 adult tracks.
Mm-hmm.
It was my first time being the adult track. Like, it was me and Grace McLean were the adults, and everybody else was the kids. And, you know, really there was maybe, 5 or 10 years between most of us, but like Grace and I felt like dinosaurs. Like, I came in, I shared a dressing room with Noah Galvin and Colton Ryan and Wes Taylor. And
all of whom are just like so incredibly talented.
Right? Come on.
And, you know, we had Heath Saunders on the show a while ago. He's brilliant. Yeah.
A genius. I came in one day and I was like, you guys heard, because I don't know, I had been in a store or something. I came in and I said, you guys heard about this Lizzo? And they were like, you mean Lizzo? I was like, yeah. I just heard about this Lizzo character. And it's like a whole thing with Lizzo. And they were like, you're 100 years old. I've never felt more old. I mean, I'm not much older than Wes, certainly, but like, it was
I was like, I think you and I are about the same age.
Yeah, well, I'm 53. And so we...
I am not. I'm 52, so you have a year on me.
No, I'm 37 years old. And
a little older, but close enough.
Yeah, I feel very, very old. But
you don't look
in that
for
show,
what it's worth.
That's kind. But that Grace and I were like the Doctor and the Nurse, and we were the King and the Queen of Hearts, and like we were all the grown-ups of the show. Was an experience that I've never had, where all of a sudden it was like, oh, I'm older now. And like when I joined School of Rock, that show had a lot of really young people in it and a lot of Broadway debuts in it. And I joined it, and someone on the team,
literal kids too,
little children, yeah. Someone on the team was like, we're so happy to have like a veteran kind of join the cast. And I was like, oh, what?
Wait, are you saying I'm the veteran?
I'm still new and fresh. But it was, I don't know. Alice by Heart was such a strange and beautiful experience. Like, especially being with Grace, who has now become one of my near and dear ones, and she's a brilliant creator.
In the Green, is that it?
Yeah. Did you see that?
I sure did. That was outrageously good.
I know.
And also, The Great Comet is my favorite musical. I have a Great Comet tattoo. I have a window card right here, which you can't see, signed by the whole cast. Like, that show is everything to me. So like, I love Grace. Yeah,
she's a real genius. And I'm actually next week starting the second reading of a show that she's writing, which is so good.
That's exciting.
It's so good.
So I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you said
No,
you're
I'm good.
tired. I don't know if
Just
you
my
want to.
kid doesn't care what I do at night. He's up. He's up.
Yeah, I get it. Just touch a little bit on some of your television roles. Like I know you
Oh,
did House
sure.
of Cards, Pose, Boardwalk Empire, Blue Bloods, Fosse Verdon, Ray Donovan, etc. If there's one or two that really stand out, I know you mentioned Pose because your wife is a fan. Anything you could tell us about that, which hasn't aired yet? Just so exciting.
Yeah,
Because
Pose was
that
fun.
show was amazing.
Yeah, that show's amazing. That was my only pandemic gig. I mean, my only like television pandemic gig, and I'm in the first scene of the episode. I think it's the third or fourth episode. You won't miss me, I don't think. I get to have a wild and terrible mustache sideburn situation.
I can't wait.
Yeah, you'll really, really enjoy that. I don't know. It's been. I really, really like doing TV. I'd like to do as much as possible.
We need to get him on Law and SVU.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, look, are you truly a New York actor if you haven't done a Law and Order show?
Well, apparently not. I'm just some asshole in New Jersey. It's yeah. I mean, what's fun about it is that, like, it's like stretching a totally different muscle. It's like a totally different experience. I really like systems and structures. Like there's a part of me that really, so the idea of being a guest star, like you just show up and you're brought into this giant machine for whatever a couple days and then you're spit out is like so fun. I don't know. House of Cards was really special. I got to go to Baltimore for a week and shoot and just like be on set with Kevin Spacey before we all knew what we now know.
It's a shame because I was such a big fan of that show. I thought it was so smart and I loved his character and then everything. And I was like, oh, okay.
I know. Yeah, it's just it's fun to do. It's fun to look back. Fosse Verdon was like magic.
Oh, that show was amazing.
I booked Fosse Verdon the same day I booked Alice by Heart. I mean, like the callbacks were literally back to back at Telsey. They were across the hall from each other, and so that was a good day. That
does casting and all these different things.
Never heard of him. Well, you know what's interesting though? I had never booked a single thing at all from Telsey. Like,
oh wow,
not a play, not a commercial, nothing. And that day, maybe it was my shirt, but like I in two consecutive rooms.
You just looked damn good that day, and they knew.
I really had I should have noticed what shirt that was. But like like Fosse Verdon was just like a day on set with Tommy Kail and Aya Cash and Michelle Williams. Like that's a fun day.
I mean, what I wouldn't do for a day on set with Michelle Williams. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. It's a fun thing to do. I don't know. It's nice. It's like and it ends up just being something that hangs around for a while. Like theater. So it kind of happens and you meet people that have seen maybe some of the stuff you've done and that's great. But like people, like when we moved to the suburbs, nobody in my town is in the business. Nobody's ever seen me in anything. And I really like that about my town. But every so often someone will be like, so I'll see a neighbor. So I was watching Blue Bloods last night. And could that have been? I'm like, yeah, I told you I was an actor. And they're like, no, I know. But like, it's strange that all of a sudden it sort of can revisit you later, even years after the fact. Or you get like a check or whatever. It's a nice little
residuals surprise. Are a beautiful thing.
Baby, they're really they can be real cute.
They sure can. So obviously, theater is your love and that's what you did, but if you were offered a serious regular role on a TV show, I assume you'd be like, let's go.
I'd go. It's, I really like, it's the reason I've done a few long runs. I really like consistency. I like a schedule. I like knowing like where I'm going to be 6 weeks from Thursday. So like to get like Modern Family or something like that, where I'm going to work Monday through Friday. I'm going to get picked up at 7 and I'll be home for dinner. Like that's the dream. Like I really should have an office job. For what it's worth, and again, for those who know me, they know I'm not the type of person that blows smoke. I wouldn't say this if I didn't feel it. I genuinely feel you have the looks and the chops to be a sitcom star or whatever it is. But like, if Jesse Tyler Ferguson can do it, I feel like there's a role out there for you that'll make you a star. That's TV. Nice. I think I'm lucky that I've always had enough perspective, probably because of all the old men I played in my youth, that like I'm playing the long game. Like
sure.
I am just now starting to age into the stuff that makes the most sense for me.
Sure.
I was never going to be like young hot guy. Like,
although
that was not.
If I may say, you are a young hot guy.
That's kind of you.
There
But
we go.
I remember. You remember Urban Cowboy?
Of course.
Oh yeah.
That poster with Matt Cavanaugh on it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that's the best looking person I've ever seen in my life. And I won't. And so I won't be doing that. Like, that is not going to be my path. And then you see, like, for me, it was always like Chris Sieber and Brooks Ashmanskis and Brian Darcy James.
Sure.
And like, these guys who are not your traditional leading men, but can lead the fuck out of a show.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's always been to me the thing that seemed like it was going to be the most likely.
I love Brooks so much. I think his work in The Prom is some of the best stage work I've seen in a long time. He's brilliant.
He's a
I'm
genius.
still a little salty he didn't get the film, but
Yeah, he's a genius. I love him so much. We did that same show with Alan up at Westchester, Williamstown. He's like the best guy. He's a brilliant guy.
So I really have one other question for you, and then I'm gonna hand it over to PJ, who has like some rapid fire unrelated to theater questions. So my last question is, what's your dream role?
A lot of my career, I think, has sort of been checking off like my 12-year-old wish list. I think I worked with Andrew Lloyd Webber in Sondheim, and I got to do Les Mis and blah blah blah. What I think I'd really like to do, what I haven't done yet, is create a new role in a Broadway musical. I'm not complaining about my career. It's very blessed, and I'm very lucky. But that's a box that I haven't yet ticked, and I'm looking forward to ticking.
Awesome. I'm sure. I genuinely, I'm sure it'll happen for you. I really believe that.
Oh, thanks. I think it probably will too. I hope so. It took like 4 or 5 Broadway shows to be like, all right, it's not. I don't think it's a fluke. Like, I think I might be able to keep doing this.
I think that's a safe bet.
Yeah, but really, you don't believe it for a long time. Like, it took me a while to kind of
look. I know imposter syndrome very intimately.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that would be a neat thing to do.
Awesome. All right, PJ, what you got?
Hit me.
All right, let's do a couple of rapid fire fun questions before we get you out of here. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about television. What is your favorite TV show, or something you enjoy watching?
We've been watching so much garbage. My favorite TV show is The West Wing.
So good.
That's my number one favorite TV show. Although tonight we just watched 3 in a row of this new show on HBO Max called. It's Kristen Milioti and Billy Magnuson.
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah, I've been wanting to watch that. And
I
Ray
love her
Romano,
so much.
Yes, and Ray Romano, and it's really good. Yeah. It's called Made for Love.
Yeah,
she is
so good in everything.
It's really good. So yeah, I'll recommend that. We're watching it right now. But I mean, to me, like, it's The West Wing, it's The Office, it's Mad About You. Like, those are my shows.
There you go. PJ?
Was that it, PJ? Was that the whole
my internet went out? Sorry. 1 second. I'm back now. My internet did the thing where you guys went black. So sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
What is your favorite movie?
I don't know. What I mean, there are movies that like I know all the problems. And I hate it for its problems. And I love, in spite of its problems, Love Actually.
That's a great answer.
It's a bad movie, and it has a lot of real problems, like gender problems, sexism problems, chauvinism problems, race problems, class problems. It's got a lot of problems, ableist problems.
Yes.
I still
kind of agree with you. The older I've gotten, the more I watch it, I'm like the stuff with Andrew Lincoln and Keira Knightley is so sketch.
Yeah.
But I still just find it kind of magical in its own way. And even if it was just
stupidly charming,
even if it was just Bill Nye as that rock star, I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah. It's not great, but I think it's the movie I've seen most in my life, if that's anything.
What can I say other than, man, I dig Richard Curtis, even if his stuff is weird sometimes.
He adapted this Andrew Lloyd Webber thing I just did right before the shutdown. It was so cool to work with him.
Cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
What about a favorite book? Was there anything that stands out?
I come back to every couple of years is A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius by Dave Eggers. I think that's a really beautiful book. I just devoured Lincoln in the Bardo.
Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius is one of my 10 favorite books of all time. So you're speaking my language.
It's real good.
It's real
Eggers
good.
really does it for me. George Saunders really does it for me. Lincoln in the Bardo really did a number on me. I just read Sedaris's new Best Of collection, and if you want to laugh out loud, you can't beat that. David Rakoff is a genius. I've been working my way through some Toni Morrison right now, which is so beautiful. That kind of stuff.
Awesome.
That's so good. What about favorite musician and or band?
Well, it's not a man. I have a lot of not cool answers to this one because I'm not.
But
cool.
it's your answer. That's what's important.
Yeah,
No,
I know,
cool
but
for you.
one wants to appear cool, doesn't one? I really love Billy Joel. I've seen him live a lot of times. I really love James Taylor. I really love John Mayer. Actually, I really love John Mayer. There's this dude I listen to a lot called Ryan Montbleu. He's super good. A singer I love called Mark Broussard, who I think a lot of folks, especially musical theater folks, tend to know. I like voices that sound like you're listening to the last moment that they're ever going to sing again, that they are broken, that they are destroying their chords for you. That's my favorite kind of a singer, is someone who's just grit.
Look, sometimes you just want to hear Your Body is a Wonderland. I get it.
Not that one specific. He shreds on guitar. He's an amazing
He
guitar
does. He's a great guitarist. I agree.
Yeah.
And what is your favorite curse word? Because we all like to swear.
I do. Well, I do. I mean, it's fuck. I come back to fuck a lot, but I like to do a lot of variations on fuck. I like to use it I cannot find the fuck coffee cup. I'll avoid using the adjective form, and I'll just kind of insert it with precision.
I love that.
I find that really appealing. I guess that's probably it. I do use fuck all the time.
I just want to say, oh, sorry, PJ.
No, I was going to say that. I think I'm good.
Okay.
I know you work and collaborate with Drew Gasparini a lot, and We Aren't Kids Anymore was one of my pandemic albums that got me through the really deep months in May and June. That is so good. So if you talk to him,
excited that you said so. Yeah.
Well, I've talked to him about it on Twitter, but if you do talk to him, let him know that
I will for sure. I don't think I'm violating any confidence by telling you this. Me and Drew and Alex and F. Michael Haney, who is the fourth member of our merry band, just rented a cabin in the woods for a long weekend in July because we're now almost all vaccinated, and so we're we just miss each other's touch.
Sure.
And so we've rented a cabin in the woods for a long weekend coming up, and we're going to go to a minor league baseball game and cook things. We're so excited. I will tell Drew you said so he will be tickled.
It sounds awesome. Well, look, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope you had a good time. I certainly did.
I had a great time.
Good.
This is a real pleasure. A real pleasure.
Where can everyone find you online? Is there anything else you want to promote? Your social media, whatever?
Jeez. Well, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Andrew Kober.
Where did you come up with that handle?
Well, funny story. So you can find me there. You can see my pose will be coming out soon. I think in May.
Awesome.
And boy, I hope I have more to report soon. And thank you for that. And if I do, I'll sure be blasting it out there. There's a lot of. I'm hopeful. I'm newly hopeful, and I think things are going to be.
And soon. For what it's worth, I would love to have the opportunity to work with you down the line because I
likewise.
Can't wait to get producing again. I had concerts planned that got canceled and shows I was working on, and I collaborate very heavily with Preston Max Allen. He's my sole collaborator, we call it. So there's just so much I can't wait to get back in the studio, so to speak, and do so.
Yeah. Well, call me, man. I got time.
I will. Well, thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Andrew Kober. We will see you soon. Be well. What another amazing interview and
So
episode of Front Center Mez. Like I said, I am such a huge fan of Andrew. Such a great interview. I'm sure he's already asleep because he has a young kid and has to be up.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen someone drop so quickly where he's
I
like,
know,
I
he
can't wait
did.
to
He was just like, I gotta go. Real quick, just a couple things we got coming up. Tomorrow night, we're doing a watch along of Kong Skull Island. As I mentioned, there is a big Schmodown pay-per-view event tomorrow. We'll probably start at least an hour late, 8 Pacific, 11 Eastern, just so there's enough time for that event to finish. And then if you want to come our way and watch Kong Skull Island, it's available on HBO Max. And this is April. All the movies we're doing watch-alongs of have to do with monkeys, gorillas, apes, etc. Saturday afternoon at noon Pacific, we are breaking down episodes 3 and 4 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier because unfortunately we were unable to do last week on the PJCN Water Cooler Chat. And finally, Sunday nights, of course, is the Unwind. You never know what you're going to get because where we're going, we don't need rails. You can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd and Stereo at Cinemaxwell. Instagram is Cinemaxwell Inc. Of course, I am very frequently here on the PJ Campbell Network. And soon enough, I'll be competing in the First Class League. And as soon as I'm allowed to say when my first match is, you better believe I'm going to shout it from the rooftops. PJ?
Real quick, I want to note that we did get a Streamlabs during the show from Mr. Jake Yakavetta, our friend Jake, who said, I'm loving all of Andrew's openness and honesty. Salute to all you wonderful people. So, Jake, we salute you. Thank you, my friend, for doing that. You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at PG_Campbell. You can find me over at the Movie Trivia Schmodown. I write the questions over there. Be nice to the writers. We're only human. And you can find me here hanging out with all of my friends doing random stuff, or you can find me on my couch watching Law & Order SVU.
Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for all your questions in the chat. We love you. Stay safe. Get vaccinated. Wear your masks. Make good choices. And we will see you next time.
Deuces.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Box, the exciting show where we open a box and decide if the box rocks or if it's a box full of rocks.
I don't know if this is going to be a good episode.
This pillow is fucking useless shirt.
Yeah.